Debbie Georgatos, and welcome to America Can We Talk. 3 stories today. Which matters most? North Korean negotiations with Trump over nuclear weapons, a brooding war, Pakistan versus India, or Cohen lying to Congress again? I'll tell you the answer in a moment. Other 2 stories, Feleceia Benton in studio with me today to talk about a fabulous event in Dallas on National Down Syndrome Day. I'll tell you all about it. And third thing, what the DEMS are signaling to you they will do if only they could. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
And welcome back again to America Can We Talk. Huge things happen in Washington today. Number one, there is an argument at the United States Supreme Court about the meaning of the First Amendment. Totally seriously, a cross, a symbol of a cross that ended up being on public property, which is a memorial for World War I victims, people whose families lived in Maryland and their sons were killed in World War I. A memorial with a cross is the subject of a Supreme Court argument about whether or not the Establishment Clause has been violated. The Constitution has been violated by having a symbol of Christianity on public property. Huge consequences, because right down the road is, Arlington National Cemetery with thousands of crosses on public land. That's one thing. Number 2, India and Pakistan, brooding war over the Kashmir area. The Pakistanis supposedly shot down an Indian jet. So you have brooding war. You have President Trump over in Vietnam in negotiations with North Korea's Kim Jong Un, trying to make sure that loony leader does not get a hold of nuclear weapons. But what has the Democrat media mob glommed onto today, and all of us must be riveted to our television watching, is a testimony of Michael Cohen, the former attorney for President Trump. I have lots to say, and I'm going to do, by the way, a special edition tomorrow of America Can We Talk, just to focus on where we are in the Mueller investigation, this whole Trump-Russia collusion thing, but understand what this Cohen hearing is. This is, in fact, the Democrats should have to make a donation in kind contribution filing, because this is simply their laying out the groundwork for their 2020 presidential elections, laying out the groundwork. This is a personal smear job attack on President Trump, unrelated to Russia, unrelated to collusion, unrelated to breaking any law. It is simply a character assassination hearing posing as an investigation into Cohen. I want to play for you just briefly one person. Jim Jordan, Republican congressman, gave his opening statement today, kind of summarizes what a lot of people are thinking. Do we have that clip here, Friendly Derek? We do. Okay, let's take it away.
Mr. Chairman, here we go. Here we go. Your first big hearing, your first announced witness, Michael Cohen. I want everyone in this room to think about this. The first announced witness for the 116th Congress is a guy who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress. Mr. Chairman, your chairmanship will always be identified with this hearing, and we all need to understand what this is. This is the Michael Cohen hearing presented by Lanny Davis. That's right. Lanny Davis choreographed the whole darn thing. The Clintons' best friend, loyalist, operative, Lanny Davis put this all together. You know how we know? He told our staff. He told the committee staff. He said the hearing was his idea. He selected this committee. He had to talk Michael Cohen into coming. And most importantly, he had to persuade the chairman to actually have it. He told us it took 2 months to get that job done. But here we are. He talked him into it. This might be the first time someone convicted of lying to Congress has appeared again so quickly in front of Congress. Certainly, it's the first time a convicted perjurer has been brought back to be a star witness in a hearing. And there's a reason this is the first, because no other committee would do it. Think about this. With Mr. Cohen here, this committee, we got lots of lawyers on this committee. This committee is actually encouraging a witness to violate attorney-client privilege. Mr. Chairman, when we legitimize dishonesty, we delegitimize this institution. We're supposed to pursue the truth, but you have stacked the deck against the truth We're only allowed to ask certain questions, even with that amendment you just told us about. Well, Russia's now on the table. You initially told us we can't ask questions about the special counsel, can't ask questions about the Southern District of New York, can't ask questions about Russia. Nope. Nope. Only subjects we can talk about are ones you think are going to be harmful to the President of the United States. And the answers to those questions are going to come from a guy who can't be trusted. Here's what the U.S. Attorney said about Mr. Cohen. While Mr. Cohen enjoyed a privileged life, his desire for ever greater wealth and influence precipitated an extensive course of criminal conduct. Mr. Cohen committed four distinct federal crimes over a period of several years. He was motivated to do so by personal greed and repeatedly used his power and influence for deceptive ends. But the Democrats don't care. They don't care. They just want to use you, Mr. Cohen. You're their patsy today. They got to find somebody, somewhere, to say something so they can try to remove the president from office.
Done. Okay, you know what, folks? We can listen to the rest of this. I thought he did a great job. Two other points he made I want to be sure we understand. Michael Cohen's already going to prison for perjury. Initially, he was Trump's attorney, and the reason we know anything about him in the context of this whole investigation is because the Mueller team broke into his office, with a warrant, went to his office, took all of his records, all of his recordings. The attorney-client privilege was tossed to the wind. The idea that this guy is in front of Congress now, his testimony got ugly, and I'll tell you more about that later in the show, and I'll tell you more about it again tomorrow. But the point of this hearing is to smear President Trump. Understand at least this: nothing, zero, zip, nada, in the entire Mueller investigation, in the entire testimony that this, I don't even call him a gentleman, this person gave today, in any way suggests, implies that President Trump colluded with the Russians to win the election. The whole reason we even know this guy's name is because that story got concocted. And if you could have heard more of what Jordan had to say, he pointed out earlier, or at some point in his remarks, they pointed out that the entire thing started because the Hillary Clinton campaign colluded with the Russians, hired Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired some guy to make up stuff, the dossier that became the instrument used by the DOJ to get warrants to start spying on Trump and everyone on his team. It was the Clinton team and the DNC who continued paying Perkins Coie, Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, to spy on Trump, to concoct a lie colluding with the Russians. That was ignored by Mueller, by the entire D.C. establishment. But we're now in this unbelievable point in time. We're in February of 2019. President Trump has been in office over 2 years. Nothing has been uncovered that backs up the lie the Democrats cooked up inside the DOJ, claiming that Trump colluded with the Russians. But we're now being treated to a just castigation of a guy who's now, he's facing prison. He's going to go to prison. He is saying anything the Democrats want him to say. In fact, he admitted during his testimony, this Michael Cohen character, admitted he had talked to the offices of two of the prominent Democrats prior to the hearing, not to coordinate what time should I be there, what day do you want to do this, coordinated with them on the topics they'd be discussing. The hearing chairman also pulled a fast one on the Republicans right before the hearing. He had said only certain topics were permitted right before the hearing started. Oh, never mind, we can talk about other things too. Republicans saying, wait a minute, you're changing the rules of the game right before kickoff, and the Democrats are rolling with it. But the main thing to take home about this hearing is this. This is, honest to goodness, the Democrat Party should have to make an in-kind contribution payment. The Democrats in Congress or acknowledgement of a payment to the DNC, because the entire purpose of this hearing is to smear Trump. Tomorrow I'm going to tell you much more about it, but I got to roll off this topic today because I do have a fabulous guest in the studio. I'm going to turn to her next. Feleceia Benton in the studio with me today. She actually was on with me last week on another show that I work on frequently. She is the founder of, the creator of a fabulous event called Think Out, Be Light, We're going to talk about that next. When I come back, though, at the end of this show, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what the Democrats are up to, not in just this hearing, but setting the stage for an ugly, ugly 2020 presidential campaign. Stay tuned. This is Debbie Georgatos. Do not go away. Be right back. And welcome back to America Can We Talk. As I mentioned before the break, I have in studio a friend and also someone who is just kind of an amazing community leader, Feleceia Benton. So first I want to say hello, welcome.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Just great. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah.
So Feleceia founded something. She created an event. It's called Think Out, Be Light. And it relates to National Down Syndrome Day and to an event that will happen here in Dallas in just a few weeks. It is the heart-meltingest, coolest idea. So I just wanted to start by having it. And by the way, this is the flyer for the event. I want you to see this. It is in Dallas. Think Out, Be Light. It's a fashion show. This little girl on the screen is Felicia's daughter, Zoe. But I want to have you just tell our listeners what this whole event is. You can tell I just love this event. So tell me all about it.
I love this event too, even though sometimes it's really stressful. The planning of it is a little bit stressful, but the event itself is really beautiful. So that's my little girl. Her name is Zoe. She was born with Down syndrome and no fingers on her right hand, neither of which we knew about prior to her being born. So it was a little bit of a surprise. But I've learned a lot about raising a child with Down syndrome, and I've learned even more about the Down syndrome community overall and other parents who experience much of what I do as a parent. So I really just wanted to create something, one, for my child to be celebrated and people like her to be celebrated. But I told this story last week a little bit about where the inspiration came from for the event. And so I had actually been thinking about doing a fashion show. I forgot to say that. I've been thinking about it. And it was one of those things that was just in my head.
You're kind of an idea person, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I know. God bless us idea people, right?
I'm glad for you. Yeah.
So we were at church one day and I saw a mom and her daughter. She had an older daughter, probably in her 20s, mid-20s, and both of them just looked like they could use a little TLC. And I thought about, what does it feel like to be a mom that has been raising a child who is differently abled for that amount of time? I could imagine that, that could be exhausting after a while if you haven't had other support and she was by herself. So, one could create a story as to what all those pieces were. But I felt inspired to do the fashion show from there. And a couple of days later, I was in a Target, off of 75 in Dallas, and I ran into a group of students who happened to be from the Soaring Eagle Center not the Soaring Eagle Center, the Notre Dame School of Dallas. And they were shopping, and the woman that was with them, her name was Carol Badalora. And I just walked up to them and I said, "You guys look like my kind of people. I've been thinking about doing this fashion show. Would you be interested in being a part of this fashion show with us?" And they said yes. And so all of that happened very quickly. Like my encounter with this woman at church, a couple days later at the Target on 75, running into this group. And so that was 5 years ago, and we've been doing it ever since.
But I haven't even told our listeners. I kind of left it all in your hands. But the whole event is for people who are Down syndrome to actually be the models in this fashion show.
That's right. So children and young adults with special needs. So primarily children with Down syndrome is what we have, but we have children who have cerebral palsy, autism, just all a range of differently abled children and young adults. They are the show, and it's beautiful.
Well, actually, what is so sweet is, so first of all, this is a community event, and I know we have listeners all over the country, but if you're in Dallas or anywhere near Dallas, you can buy tickets. You can see on the screen. You can go to, in fact, I typed it out. It is thinkoutbelight.com and purchase tickets. But the whole point, what I love about this is it's celebrating and letting these children and young people who are differently able, to use your term, be kind of the center of attention in a positive way.
Yeah.
So do they like being models? What's the story?
They love being models. It is, we've got a couple of videos on the website that you have to go and check out.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty incredible when the lights come on and you tell them to go. They are the most non-shy people in the universe. and they take the stage and they shine. We do a little model coaching prior to the event, and so we coach them on how to walk the runway, how to turn, where their points are, what to do when they get there. And so when the show begins, they know exactly what they're doing.
Well, I love it for the kids, obviously, or the models, but I also love it for the families. It's got to be, I mean, I just think there's so many people who have, you know, whose children are kind of in the range of healthy and you know, typical, whatever the word is, don't really probably think day to day how different life is in a family where you've got even just one child with special needs, and everything about your life has to work around that child. And I feel like there's so much thought about, you know, how do we help, but just to celebrate their exuberance, their identity, them enjoying themselves. I love that about this event.
That's right. It's a really great way for parents who have children who are typical, it's a good word, to introduce their children to other children and young adults who are not. It's a really great way to expose them. I get a lot of questions from moms and parents about, you know, what do I want to do if I want my child to be raised in an inclusive home? How do I facilitate that? Yeah. And it's not something that comes naturally. It takes a little work on both sides. I also talk to parents who have children with special needs and say we have to relax some. And for the folks who want to learn about how to be a part of our community, we have to let them in, and we have to show them and walk them through sometimes the awkwardness of educating people about how we're going to live together in this inclusive kind of space. So I think I'll Be Light is a really great introduction to that.
Okay, this is thinkoutbelight.com, which you can go to. But the other thing I was going to comment about this was, beside the families coming, families having their children or young adults participate, families who are not at all part of that community can come and just feel like, well, gosh, you're supporting the community, you're supporting the whole, we're all in this community together.
That's right.
I love that.
And the really cool thing this year, I have a personal philosophy that everybody can contribute. So regardless of what it is you do or do not have, you can do your part for society. And so the folks who are a part of our fashion show, since they are the feature presentation, we are raising money for a family who has lost a lot of things. They've lost their home, a mother and daughter. They lost the mom lost her husband, and they also lost their brother and son sometime last year. So they've lost a lot in a very short amount of time. And so the proceeds from this event actually go to that family. So it's just our way of saying, everybody can contribute. These children and young adults can do their part, invite their friends. You can come and support, and we can give back to some folks who need our help.
The coolest thing ever. Last thing I mentioned, you were telling me, or I think you were saying last week, that you have, in addition to just buying tickets and coming, you can also be, for if you're a designer, you could offer your fashions to be worn by these kids. Or if you're there are other ways professionals can be involved in helping.
That's right. If you are a business owner or a church or an organization, you can be a sponsor. The sponsorship levels are pretty inexpensive for sponsorship levels on average.
Yeah, they are, believe me.
So you can be a sponsor. If you are a stylist or a makeup artist, or you have that kind of creative skill, we're looking for volunteers in that space, and we'll train you on how to work with our models. We have maybe one more spot for a designer. Our designers are coming in pretty strong right now, but we would love to have more volunteers.
I love that, and I think, you know, not the last time I saw you, but previous time you were on my show, the same America Can We Talk, we were talking about how, you know, and in fact it's really relevant right now because we just had in Congress, we had the Senate decline the idea of this Born Alive bill. We had Senator Sass brought forth a bill essentially saying if a child survives abortion, you know, that the doctor should then try to resuscitate or to care for that child. If the child survives, give it care. And I think part of the argument of the very ardently pro-choice or pro-abortion community is, oh, people have to make tough decisions, and you know, and maybe abortion's the best choice. And I'm only raising this to say it is a very tender thing for in the pro-life, pro-choice discussion in America for people to get past the argument of people who are arguing about, you know, well, pro-choice should be an option is, well, you don't know how hard it is to deal with a child with special needs, and right. That is true. I do not, but I do know it's a potential rough, you know, slippery slope when you start to say which life has value. And that's the other reason I love this, because it's valuing life of all different kinds, this event.
Yeah, I would say that every child comes with their own set of a learning curve. Every child does.
I'm with her, yeah.
And so who's to say that my child, who was born with a spare 21st chromosome and no fingers on her right hand, is going to be more difficult than my nephew, who was just rough, you know? Who's to say that the one child is going to be more difficult or easier than the other? So I think that every child, every human, every person comes with their own set of things, and it is the responsibility of the person to whom that human was gifted to labor and to steward whatever, the good and the bad of whatever that person comes with.
Okay, as I always tell you, Feleceia Benton, you're kind of heart-melting. I mean, but that is such a good point, this notion that there's, you know, that there perfect children exist out there that just kind of flow. And I can tell you as a mom of 3 who are young adults, I mean, every child has challenges. And you got to be the mom, you got to figure out what they need, you got to, whether it's encouragement, guidance, discipline, whatever it is, you got to work with your child. So.
Right. Yeah. Every last single one of them. And there are lessons inside of that child that are for you as the parent. And your child was given to you for your set of lessons. That's my own personal philosophy, but I've just seen it too many times. I've seen that play out so many times. Children are a reflection of their parents. They are a reflection of the person from whom they came. And so they can't help it.
Love that. Love that whole message. Heart melting, as I told you. I told her it's against the rules to make the host cry. I told her that ahead of time, so she better. We're okay. But this is a fabulous event. I really do encourage you, even if you're listening from some other state, you can make donations. Anyone can donate. If you're anywhere in this area, you can purchase tickets and go to the event. And just to spread the concept that the valuing of each unique life is part of a culture of goodness, a culture of you know, including everyone and loving on everyone. And I love, as I say, the idea, this isn't just to buck each other up, but to really celebrate these precious young people.
That's right. And we are blessed in return. People come to this event and they cry the whole time because it's hard to take in. It's beautiful though.
Yeah. Okay. Can't get started on that. And on that note, Feleceia Benton, you are a rock star. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, you got it. Love it. Thank you so much.
Love having you. And again, it is thinkoutbelight.com. Great name, great event, great lady who founded it and runs it. So I hope you all can support it. And this is America Can We Talk. I'm Debbie Georgatis. Stay tuned. And welcome back to America Can We Talk. I don't know, Derek, my happy board operator here, who just is a wonderful human being. I'm not sure if that was all on air or not, but that's okay if it was. Felicia's been on my show when it used to be on Salem, and then we actually were together last week. I was on the round table of a Christian radio show, Point of View, had her on them. She is just an extraordinary example of a mother who is just not, you know, she's doing so much more than just simply caring for the basic needs. And actually, this little girl, Zoe, her daughter's been at our house. She came over with Feleceia one day. She's a happy, rambunctious, funny kid. I mean, she's got challenges, but don't we all? But I love the idea of just embracing life and valuing life, every life. So that was my little interview for today with Feleceia Benton. I want to turn now, I'm going to go back to the hearing this morning that was in Washington and back to Michael Cohen, who testified in Congress. And I know I said earlier that a lot of what he was doing, what Michael Cohen's doing in Congress, is simply helping the Democrats plot out and strategize their 2020 presidential election plan. Because I could actually write the Democrats, they should maybe pay me. I could write their entire playbook for 2020, because the entire playbook of the Democrats in 2020 is to argue that President Trump, and by extension, anyone who likes him, anyone who ever worked for him, anyone who helps him, anyone who supports him is an evil, awful, horrible person, is a liar, is a racist, is a this, is a that. I want to hit part of what Cohen had to say today. He actually released his statement ahead of time, naturally, to a Democrat, I think it was Politico, some left-leaning website. He released his statement. And in his statement, Cohen said he's going to come in and answer any questions. And to be really clear, Cohen's going to prison for lying to Congress. He's headed off in about, I think, 2 months or 6 weeks or something. He's already going. So the argument of the Democrats and Cohen is, hey, I have no reason to lie. I'm already toast. He had to turn in his lawyer's license. He's been disbarred. He's already had to, the public scorn and shame and all that, blah, blah, blah. So he's in Congress today, and you could ask yourself, what's the reason to have the hearing? I mean, all of what, Cohen had as the lawyer for Trump has been seized by the Mueller team. They already have it all. They raided his office, which, if you stop and think about, my first point I want to hit is just about the attorney-client privilege. You might say, well, the attorney-client privilege really can't count for everything. I mean, sometimes you got to waive it. Let me be really clear. The person who owns the privilege in the attorney-client privilege is not the attorney. Cohen doesn't own the privilege of all of his communications with Trump. Trump, the person who is the client, is the owner of the privilege. That's how attorney-client privilege law works. Okay, so they have everything Cohen said already. So why is Cohen there today? Well, let me tell you, he started out his testimony. He started his testimony by saying, I'm really sorry, I'm such a bad guy. I lied, I'm a really terrible person, blah, blah, blah. But he ended up saying he is ashamed of having worked with Trump, but he said Trump is a racist. His terms were Trump is a racist, a con man, and a cheat. And then he goes through, he talks about how he coordinated his testimony ahead of time, both with this Elijah Cummings, who is the head of this current committee he's sitting in front of, which is the House Oversight Committee. He also coordinated with Adam Schiff, the Democrat, who is the head of the House Intelligence Committee. So Cohen yesterday testified in closed-door testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Today, public hearing before the House Oversight. Tomorrow, closed-door testimony again before the House Intelligence Committee. So Cohen is there to smear Trump, to attack him. He tells stories, and I just want to hit, there's so many things I could tell you about it, but I want to hit on some things because I think they meld well into what is going to happen in the 2020 election cycle. To start with, the accusation of racism. Now, Cohen said Trump is a racist. He tells some stories where he's the only one there. I was in the car riding around with Trump, and he said something bad. And he recounts supposedly what Trump said. Well, the reason that the American left and the Democrats had their go-to accusation for everybody they don't like, every person they don't like, every person who refuses to agree with them, their go-to accusation is racism, is because it is so ugly, so upsetting, so rattling, so vicious, and impossible to disprove. This is the reason the Democrats use this line all the time. Trump is a racist. And so Cohen tells a story, could never be disproven, that he was in a car one day and Trump made some comment that that if Trump made the comment, I'm not going to say it for you, but if Trump made the comment that Cohen claimed he made, yeah, that would be racist. But there's no way to know if that ever happened. In fact, one of the questions, Mark Meadows said, well, you recorded hundreds of hours of comments, you recorded conversations. Do you have anything, anytime you claim that Trump said all these terrible things, do you have anything recorded like that? No. But somehow, you see what Cohen is doing, he's helping the Democrat effort to lay the groundwork that Trump is a racist. And this is going to be a primary theme in the Democrat primary, in the primaries in 2020. We have whatever it is now, 10 Democrats running to become president, to oust Trump. This is going to be one of the singular arguments of the Democrats. So I want to focus on this racism charge a little bit. The other reason that many on the left try to claim Trump is a racist is because when he made his announcement that he was going to run for president, he came down the big escalator that day. He said he spoke of the southern border being so insecure and the danger of the southern border. And he made comments about who comes across the southern border. He said in those comments, essentially, it's, I don't remember his exact language, but, bad guys, criminals, thieves, murderers, blah, blah, came across the border. He also said in the same speech, and of course, lots of other people come across the southern border, people seeking jobs and a better life. So that one comment by Trump is viewed by and is pointed to by so many people in this country on the left trying to say, see, Trump's a racist. So because he pointed out that many people who cross the southern border are criminals, which is a factually accurate statement. He didn't say all, he said some. So right now, as we're watching the southern border, we have drug smugglers, human traffickers, we have criminals of all type. We have people, members of gangs, MS-13. We do have a significant criminal element entering the southern border, which is unsecured. But Trump wasn't allowed to say that because you can't make any reference that could possibly be contorted by the left as racist. Trump wasn't willing to follow the left-wing rules on that topic. I will digress a little bit here and tell you that I have a friend here in Dallas. She's a lawyer. She is Hispanic. She's third-generation American, ancestors from Mexico. She grew up on a ranch along the Mexico-Texas border. She's obviously well-educated. She's a lawyer. She watched Trump in the speech when he came down the elevator, he announced he's going to run for president. She said she got on the Trump team that day. And she's Mexican, by Mexican descent. She's Hispanic. She said she got on the Trump team because she grew up along the border of Texas and Mexico, and her family on their ranch had serious problems with people crossing the border into Texas, into America, committing crime, hurting their property, damaging their ranch property. She said, I said to her, I cannot believe, I'm honestly surprised to hear that, because at that time, frankly, I was a Ted Cruz supporter. I said, I'm so surprised to hear that. And she said, what he said is true. It's just true. It's not, she said, he didn't say everybody. He said many people crossing the Texas-Mexico border are criminals. And she said, and he's right. So we're in this place in this country now that, for example, when Trump wants to build a wall to secure the southern border, a wall where it's needed. He wants to have a secure border. He wants to redo the immigration system. He wants to force people trying to enter America from Mexico to go through the portals, the entry points that we designate, and to not enter America in the unsecured areas where they can just come into America and disappear into the heartland. This is fundamental, patriotic, rational, mainstream America thinking. But this is what the left has managed to contort into racism. They can call Trump a racist because he doesn't want the southern border to be insecure. And, folks, I'm raising this because I think in the 2020 election cycle, we will be pummeled. I shouldn't even say 2020. It's starting now. We're in February 2019. It's starting now. The effort of the American left to divide this country and say, Trump is racist, the GOP is racist. So, are you with us, the Democrats, in getting rid of racism, or are you a racist? Those are the only two choices the Democrat candidates are going to give America. The reason that Michael Cohen is sitting up in Congress testifying today is not because he has any new information that will suddenly reveal and prove that President Trump colluded with the Russians to win the election, because he didn't. And Mueller knows this, Comey knows this, the FBI knows this, the DOJ knows this, the entire Congress knows this. They all know there's no evidence, no reason any longer to believe that Trump colluded with the Russians to win the election. So Cohen's up there not to talk about that, although he's throwing out various little, well, I do know about this. I knew Trump knew about the Trump Tower meeting and there was some Russian there, so I don't know. There is no, as I say, tomorrow I'm going to really deep dive into this whole thing because I want to lay out for you what actual facts we know. what we know the Democrats did, what we know Mueller has uncovered, what Mueller has failed to prove, and really talk to you about how much this matters in terms of losing control of the national security agencies, the law enforcement agencies of our country, if we don't demand that the wrongdoers, the people who concocted the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, if we don't hold them accountable. But that's for tomorrow. I invite you to come back tomorrow and really help listen as I lay that out for you. I'm use my lawyer hat, my political hat, and I'm going to use my just patriotic American hat. It matters if America preserves our law enforcement agencies. But turning back to this whole racist thing that the left is working on, they're massaging the American people. They're working toward a divided America. They're working toward an America where Americans of color are convinced by the ongoing spewing of Cohen and many of the Democrat candidates for president, by commentators, by CNN, by the Democrat media mob, the relentless spewing of the accusation that there's racism just around every corner in this country, racism under every rock, and this country is at the tipping point tolerating the horrors of racism, and that the election in 2020 needs to be about, are we racist or not? What the election in 2020 is really about is whether or not we're willing to reassert our country, the value of our country, reassert the idea in America that truth exists, reassert the idea that borders matter, that you have to have secure borders or you don't have a country, that we have to have the rule of law that applies to every single person equally, that we have to clean out the Justice Department, we have to clean out the FBI of people who conspired against Trump. They conspired against him prior to the election when they thought they could bring him down with all these hints of Trump-Russia collusion. Then after he won, again, what you saw with Cohen, this is the ongoing Democrat temper tantrum meltdown over the fact that they lost the 2016 presidential election, that Hillary lost. It is a Democrat meltdown continued, that somehow because they lost and it wasn't right and Hillary should have won and they wanted Hillary, they didn't want Trump, and the American people didn't do what the Democrats wanted them to do, the Democrats have engaged in a rolling attack on Trump from the day he won the presidency. The rolling attack by the FBI, the DOJ, the false accusations, and now we're going to start into the whole Cohen's already been lied to Congress, but he's back up there talking about trying to smear Trump in every way he can. This is just the ongoing Democrat attack to destroy President Trump and his presidency. It has nothing to do with seeking truth. It has nothing to do with trying to understand, was there really collusion? But on the racism argument that's happening, part of what I want to touch on today, and I'm going to go on to it many more times, I'm sure, but you've probably heard on the American left that the several of the considered serious contenders for the Democrat nomination for presidency are beginning to talk about reparations. Kamala Harris, the Democrat senator from California, she's announced she's running for president. Also, the senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, she's announced she's running for president. Both of them have spoken and said they favor reparations. What they mean by that is using tax dollars to give to people in America who are descendants of the slaves back to the era of slavery, which ended in 1865. Or they say, well, it's slavery plus, segregation plus, they point to America's history even after slavery ended to basically argue that America is such an evil, horrible, awful, racist country that our country must begin the discussion about reparations, about the idea that your tax dollars should be used to give just straight out hand money to people who are the descendants of slaves because they have suffered in this country because of this allegedly ongoing pending racism. And I want to just spend the last 5 minutes of this show talking about reparations. I want to spend just a few minutes encouraging you to think about what the Democrats are really arguing. Many people in this country, my own family, for example, my ancestors came basically from Norway and Germany. They went up to where most Scandinavians went. They went up to Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota. That's where they went when they came here. They were not slave owners. In fact, the only tangential connection my family might have to slavery is that my father's, whatever it is, grandfather, great-grandfather, organized the Minnesota militia to head to the, to engage in the Civil War on the behalf of the North. So he organized a militia from Minnesota, from Minneapolis, to fight on behalf of the North against slavery. That is the only connection my family has. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans, in fact, many Americans whose families came to America after slavery was over. There are families who came to America who are of color, but didn't come. They came after slavery was long over. They came from African countries for a variety of reasons as refugees. They came from Jamaica. They came from other places. They have no family connection to slavery. So the reparations thing has that element of unfairness to it. To state the obvious point, no one alive today owned a plantation and had slaves in America. No one alive today was a slave. So we're talking about the argument of reparations is making people who live in America today and who pay taxes to the government have that money be used to pay other people who were not slaves, who are the descendants of slaves, and somehow make things fair. And I got to tell you that the reason the left is pushing this, the reason Kamala Harris is because this perpetuates racial division in this country. The reparations argument is not only illogical in terms of no one alive today owned slaves, no one alive today was a slave, but it has endless and unfairness and complexity to it. What if you are a person of mixed race? So some of your ancestors were slaves and some of your ancestors were not slaves, were white, and so they weren't plantation owners, or they were plantation owners. Who gets to claim these reparations? Or what if you are an extremely successful American, an African American, a descendant of slaves, but you're very, very successful? Do you get reparations? I mean, the whole thing, it has endless elements of complexity, endless elements of potential unfairness and injustice. But the other reason the left raises this, besides to just continue to put salt on the wound of past racism, to continue to agitate for people to believe this is a horribly racist country, the left politically benefits when people in this country think of each other as racists. They benefit from having people suspicious of each other, of having people of one race suspicious of the other, people believing racism looms behind every rock, around every corner. The left benefits from this because they function entirely on identity politics. It is their go-to argument on every subject. The other thing that makes it so crazy that the left is pushing this now and pushing on Trump, when you stop and think about President Trump, we are in a time when he has, through his policies and announced policies during his campaign, now carried out, we have the lowest unemployment rate among African Americans in history. So we have an economy helping people to lift themselves up, to be part of the American experiment, the American dream, the American free market economy. We have people being lifted up by his policies. We have a president who actually signed on to the prison reform bill that is causing people, and he pointed out in his State of the Union address, he pointed out that there is racial unfairness in this system, and part of the reason for that bill is to correct past racial unfairness. It's a president who's got under his presidency the Blexit movement rising up. We have Candace Owens, we're about to go, I got to cut off, we're about out of time today, but There was a tweet by Candace Owens today. She is the founder of Blexit, the Black and Latina exit from the Democrat Party. She's made the argument in dozens of contexts that the Democrat Party in this country has not helped Black America. They just promise to help Black America. They just claim they care. They just claim they have things that are going to somehow help Black America. And they have won. The Democrats have overwhelmingly won the Black vote in this country. And we have Candace Owens and others championing the Blexit movement, pointing out to their fellow Black Americans, name some way in which the Democrat Party has actually helped you. And I've heard her say it at rallies. Candace Owens, you tell me, she's speaking to her fellow Black Americans, how has the Democrat Party actually helped Black America? There's no answer. They have not helped Black America. They've just said they would. So we have a president who is helping get people out of prison who are unfairly treated in our system, getting more jobs brought to the Black community, and a president under whom Blexit took shape. And here is Candace Owens' tweet, the killer for the end of the day here. Candace Owens tweeted this out today about Michael Cohen's testimony. She said, should I go nuclear on, Michael Cohen, who I know from years ago and who tried to approach me last summer to help me change the narrative, also known as lie, about the president, because I'm thinking I should. This coward plotted this entire racist lie to save himself. So Candace Owens, leader of Blexit, calling out Michael Cohen as someone who tried to convince her to stop helping Trump and convince her to change the narrative about Trump being the one helping Black America. Cohen's now in Congress doing exactly what Candace Owens said he would do. I am way past time to go. I'm so sorry to tell you. Tomorrow on America Can We Talk, we come back tomorrow, I'm going to talk to you and really try to lay out where we are on the Mueller investigation and the entire need to correct this horrific injustice done against Trump by the Democrats, FBI, and DOJ. I'm Debbie Georges. America Can We Talk, 3 p.m. Central Time every day. Come back tomorrow.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.
Can you hear